Okay, thank you. We usually give people a couple of minutes more before we start, but Moshe David has to go for a Shiva visit, so that's why we start in time today. It's a good thing to be in time, to respect the time. So I want to start immediately with giving a background of where we are historically, maybe to explain a little first a timeline, if we want. So we can say that if we look at a very big timeline, we have we're very soon celebrating Hanukkah, and the Hanukkah story, Matidyahu and the Kohen Gadol and Yehuda Maccabi and all of the Maccabeans, the whole this whole story took place in the middle 130s before Common Era, and that is about 200 years before the destruction of the temple, which was 70 years into Common Era. So this is the time which we're dealing with the different couples now of leaders, the head of the leaders of the Sanhedrin during this period. And we have first the period of the Hasmonean leaders who partly are kings and Kohanim, and then there are there's a relatively peaceful time, which you learned about during the last shiur, where you have the kings of Yanai, and you have a queen, Shlom Tzion HaMalka, who was, they were the queens of Judea, and this was a time, the best time of political stability in Judea. And during this time, you had again beginning of Torah studies. You had the introduction of Torah learning and education for all, and this was a good period in many ways and senses. There was peace both internally and external, independence and peace. And then comes a period of great political turmoil, which starts after the queen of Shlom Tzion. After this period, you have her sons, and then the next period, you can say from around 67. These two kings are from 100 to 67. From the period of 67 to the period of 37, this was a period of bloody wars the whole time. One king ousted the other king, and they revolted against each other. It was mainly her two sons, Horkanos and Aristobulus. These were her two sons. So one was first king, and then the other one revolted against him, the younger son, and then the older son made a coalition with the Edomites, and then they revolted against Aristobulus, the younger, and they then destroyed during this time also, a lot was destroyed in the temple service, and there was a long siege, and the temple was defiled, and this was in many ways a full battle, which also gave the Romans, who had come in also to Judea during this period with Pompey, who had come in, the Romans started more and more control over Judea from the year 67 and on. Not full control, but it became under the Roman dominance from 67 on. Now, I could talk a lot about how this went backwards and forwards and what happened, but this is not what really our Mishnah is talking about, but it gives a lot of background for what our Mishnah talks about. And then comes a new king of Judea. And he comes to power. He comes in already, he's first the governor in the north, and he's ousted. He goes to Rome. He makes a coalition with the Caesar of Rome, and he then comes to become the king of Judea. Very famous king. He's famous both for what he built and also partly for his cruelty. He's also famous for the Christian world because he's mentioned several times in the New Testament. And his name was Herod, the king of Herod. He became king in Jerusalem. When he captured Jerusalem was in year 37. And he expanded, as we know, the temple, as we know, especially the great expansion of the temple to the north. And he built lots of what we know today in Caesarea. It's from him, Masada, lots of places all over Israel. This was his magnificent building. He was king. He was full king for 34 years. So this was a very long and important period. Now, he had a kind of ambivalent relationship to the religious leadership. He had a kind of respect. The first religious leadership under his reign were these two leaders, these two rabbis, the heads of the Sanhedrin, who we're talking about, Shmaya and Avtalion. Now, Shmaya and Avtalion, who are the couple, they're the fourth couple who are in Pirkei Avot. They're the couple who we're dealing with. Now, it's very interesting to know a little bit about their background. We don't know much about their background, but we have different sources which all seem to indicate that Shmaya and Avtalion were either themselves converts to Judaism, or they were descendants of converts for Judaism, or children of converts for Judaism. Now, that in itself is somewhat surprising, that the two very, very strong and powerful, learned leaders of the Sanhedrin, that they are converts to Judaism. Now, you might think, well, that's not very surprising, because if you look at the Scandinavian Nordic communities today and you see who are those who study most and learn most and know most, you'll see that it's very often those who have converted to Judaism, and they are the ones who are the most active in the religious life and so on. We're not so surprised about that. But still, it must have created at least some reaction that two, you can say, in a way, outsiders in a society where there was Torah studies, full Torah studies amongst the rabbis, that two people who were somewhat outsiders, that they fully had the leadership, the Torah leadership, and we see something, I think, which is very crucial for understanding Judaism, that Judaism is not, as we often say, Judaism is not really a race. It's not it has to do with the content. It has to do it, and if these are the Torah giants of the generation, then they're the ones who are elected to be the leaders of the Sanhedrin. But some of the reaction against it, we see it in a story which is told, which is quite famous. It's brought several places when we talk about Shmaya and Avtalon, which I want to share with you, and it gives you a little about the power play which was amongst the religious leadership. The story is told in the Talmud about the high priest, and it says that the high priest, he came out from the holiest of holy on Yom Kippur. And this was, when he came out from Yom Kippur, from the holiest of holy, this was the big thing. You know from the Yom Kippur prayer that when he came out, this was a big rejoicement, and everybody rejoiced with the high priest and made the big festival. And, the whole day was a day of great rejoicement. And when he came out, the story says, he came out and the whole Jewish people, everybody in Jerusalem, they came after him and, wanted to cheer him. Like there's no football game tonight, so like the big heroes when they come back from when they won the World Cup, they come back home and they will be rejoiced like the Moroccans yesterday rejoiced when the Moroccan team had won last night, and the whole of the country was. So this was the way they usually rejoiced with the high priest. So when he walked down, everybody went after him, rejoicing that he came out alive from the service in the temple. But then they saw Shmaya and Avtalon, and suddenly everybody turned away from the high priest, and they went to Shmaya and Avtalon, which was not very politically correct. Right? The politically correct was to go after the high priest, but these were revered rabbis, and they went after Shmaya and Avtalon. And it says at the end of the day, Shmaya and Avtalon came to pay the respects to the high priest, and he was somewhat offended. So what did he say to them? He said, Yavo b'nei amamin leshalom, that those who are the children of the nations, you're not really Jewish, he didn't say they weren't Jewish, right? But he hinted, those who are the children of the nations, they can come in peace. Now, the tradition even says that they were descendants of Sancheriv, who was one of the kings of the kingdom of the Assyrian kingdom, which besieged Jerusalem and conquered Babylonian. I don't want to go into exactly the whole story of Sancheriv. You can read about it in Google or in the Book of Kings if you want to look up about Sancheriv. They were the descendants of Sancheriv. This was their... Now, first of all, you don't do that. You're not allowed to tell somebody who's converted to Judaism, according to the Torah, you're not allowed to remind them about from who they descend if this is a kind of offense to them. So they knew how to answer back to this high priest. They said, Yavo b'nei amamin, she'osim ma'aseh Aharon, ve'al yavo ben Aharon leshalom, she'eno oseh ma'aseh Aharon. He says, they said, it's better that those who are descendants of the nations, but they're doing what the high priest Aharon did, which was to make peace between people. It's better that they come, even though they are from the nations, and not the high priest who doesn't act as a high priest and he doesn't bring people together in peace. It's much better that the people who are converted, who come from other nations, that they are the ones who come. Now this shows a kind of clash between the high priest, who probably at that time was Horkanos, who then, by the way, later was killed by the king. But the high priest Horkanos, he was the high priest, but it was a kind of religious clash between those who had the learning and those who were in the temple. And you see the clash, and you see the kind of debate they had in this kind of clash. So this is the background for our Mishnah, which really expresses this. So with this background, I want to study with you the text of our Mishnah. Rav Meir is supposed to know how to put this up. We need a little Hanukkah miracle if it works. And it worked. So Shmaya and Avtalion, this is our couple, the fourth couple which we're talking about.
Sorry, do you see the text, everyone?
Yes, I see it at least. Okay. And probably if I see it, everybody else sees it, because... Okay. So Shmaya and Avtalion, they were the fourth couple, and they received from the third couple, which you read about in the last Mishnah, you had Mishnah 9, they received the tradition and they became the next leaders. Now, what did they teach? Or what did they used to say? What did they say? They said, love the work, the melacha. Now, work here means also practical physical work, right? Toil, work. It's not like we talked about some weeks ago, avodah, that it's the avodah of the avodah in avodat Hashem, that it's the work in the temple. No, work is work. Love to do a work. Don't sit back and don't do anything. Go to work. Also physical work with the soil, but also just to go to work. Love to go to work. That's the first expression. The second expression is hate. Now, this expression is It's been translated in so many different ways. What the Hebrew expression is to hate snaita rabbanut. Now, there are those who say it means to hate the rabbinate. Now, that's not the meaning, but the meaning is to hate it. I don't like the translation here, the superior. That I don't like. But it means position, taking position, official position. That I think is a better translation. Now, there are those who have interpreted also as taking rabbinical positions. And if you look in the interpretation of Avot de Rabbi Natan, which is the earliest interpretation of Pirkei Avot, which is already a Mishnaitic interpretation of Pirkei Avot, it says that you should not be the one who runs after a rabbinic position, but others should give it to you. You should not run after and say, I want this position, even in a rabbinic position. But there is a thing with, and this shows you, which brings us also to the third expression, but it shows you Shmaya and Avtalion's disgust for all kinds of positions. By the way, there's an interesting, I saw this today and did at least not remember to have seen it before, a Talmudic expression that the reason why Joseph died before all his brothers was because he had official position. He had Rabbanut. It used the expression Rabbanut there. Because Joseph had Rabbanut, he died earlier than all his brothers. Or maybe you should, now he did, he had a purpose for that. It was God put him in this place and so on. But still, there is a price to pay for position. And therefore he died before all his brothers, although he was the second youngest of the brothers. And the third expression is, and it follows like what the first two expressions say, do not attempt to draw near to the ruling authority. Again, look at the background, the historic background for what they're saying. Keep away from keep your name away. That's what the Rambam says in his explanation to this. Keep a low key towards government. Again, government in this case is a corrupt government, is government which no good comes out of, and they're like dividing very much religion and state here at this time. And they're building up a Bet Midrash which is very separate, from what they're building up a wall like around the Bet Midrash, Shmaya and Avtalion. Even in a certain way, an elitist wall. We know this from the story of Hillel. If you remember the story of Hillel comes from Babylon. He's one of already a big religious leader when he comes from Babylon. It's a very famous story. He comes in the winter, and he can't come into the Bet Midrash because he can't pay, and he then freezes to ice on the roof until when they can't see then inside the Bet Midrash, and they take him into the Bet Midrash and warm him up. He nearly freezes to death because he wants to hear the Torah of Shmaya and Avtalion, who were his two big heroes. He comes all the way from Babylon to Judea in order to hear the Torah of Shmaya and Avtalion, and just to, he can hear from the roof. The Torah was so unique, so special, but it was a Torah which they built a wall around because they were afraid of the external forces which existed during this period, which were difficult and corrupt and corrupted what went on in the temple and corrupted life in general. And we have to understand it also under these circumstances which they lived under. So this is again, when it says hate position, it's like an opposite of love. It doesn't necessarily mean hate. It means be modest. Be modest according to position. This is, I think, what I can say. You can expand a lot about every one of these three expressions, but you understand that these three expressions all have to do with each other. They're all connected, and they're connected very much to the period, but they have relevance to also our period today and to all periods in life. And these two leaders were two Torah giants who we know a lot about. There are a lot of expressions about them at different places in the Talmud. So with this, I think it is now exactly the time to give, it's seldom that I give the full half hour to Rabbi Meir, but I'm pleased to do so.
Thank you very much. I don't promise I will use the whole half hour.
We can also take questions, of course.
Yes, first of all, perhaps.
You maybe, if you have any questions now, maybe for 2-3 minutes before, if you want, Rabbi Meir, if it's okay?
Yes.
If you have any questions.
But maybe you could expand a little about something which is always very actual, that the idea of mixing political power and religion to use religious authorities to enhance certain political views, which can even, you know where I'm taking it.
Well, that's a long lecture which you have heard me speak about in different connections. One of the problems of the Maccabees, which, by the way, their period ended. The Maccabees period in the year when Horus took over, that was the end, the final end of all of the Maccabees. But part of the problem with the Maccabees was the mixture of them being having both the kingdom and the religious leadership being the Kohanim, and this mixture there's a lot of ambivalence amongst Chazal towards them because of this mixture of political and religious leadership, which is problematic. But I spoke about it for many years, for many hours in lectures before, so it's not to expand now.
I have a question, if possible.
Yes. Who is speaking?
This is Daniel.
From Malmö? Yes.
From Malmö, yes. So I'm thinking, does this verse comment anything on the work in a political field or as a politician and being a Jew?
So, melacha can also be, there are commentators.
I'm thinking of the last section, to attempt to draw near the ruling authority.
Okay.
Yes.
Listen, it's this is for a certain period of time, right, we're talking about. There have been Jews throughout history who have had a close relationship to ruling authorities, also leading rabbis, and there are also Jews who have been in political positions, also religious Jews. It all depends, I think, under the circumstances and what kind of attitude you come. And if you come in modesty and you come in not in order to achieve position, and we just mentioned before Yosef, right, who was the number 2 in Mitzrayim. What was that? Do we really say that this was wrong? We don't say it was wrong, in spite of the expression which I told you before. And so this has to be seen out of this period which they lived under, and at the same time it has to be seen as a warning also for all periods. And not, but it doesn't mean that Jews should not be say today, in a democratic society where Jews can have a position and they can influence in a way which is sanctifying the name of God in a positive way. That doesn't mean that you can't do that, but do it with modesty and honesty, and then yes.
Thank you.
Okay, Meir.
Yes, thank you. If there are no more questions, first of all, shalom to all of you, and thank you very much to Rabbi Michael for his shiur, giving also the historic background, which is also important for the Mishnah I'm going to teach, and I will speak a bit about that later on. If you allow, we'll go straight to the text itself. Avtalion, who is the second one of this pair, of this zug, he used to say, sages, be careful with your words, lest you incur the penalty of exile and be carried off to a place of evil waters, and the disciples who follow you drink and die, and thus the name of heaven becomes profane. These are his words. We just pay attention to the text itself, it says at first, be careful with your words, and that these are words that could be understood. Afterwards, there is an allegory, actually, and that has to be explained. And then you have to explain the whole text, and you have to show how the allegory fits with the idea of the Mishnah. That will be the task of the one who tries to make a commentary to this Mishnah and to explain it, and that is what we are going to do together. And I would like to show it in two ways. The first way is it's connected with a historic background. But let's have a look at the text first of all. The beginning, as I said, is understood. But what is lest you incur the penalty of exile? Why does the sage get exiled because of him not being careful with his words? Secondly, what are the evil waters? And thirdly, why do the pupils or students who drink it, why will they die? And what is dying in the framework of the allegory used here? And why does this lead to Chilul Hashem? That is to the name of heaven, that it becomes profaned. And now I'll try to, after saying this, I'll try to explain it in its first way, that is with its historic background. And doubtless there is a historic background to this Mishnah, as Rabbi Michael showed very well beforehand. And it was already said that Avtalion lives before Hillel. Hillel and Shammai comes after this pair, and we are during the time of the temple, and sort of in the last periods, perhaps last 100 years of the temple until it will be destroyed. As it was said already, this is a difficult time. There are different sects starting to arise with different ideas, and they are heard, these ideas, as well as Greek philosophy. That's on the one hand. There is, let's say, the central path of Judaism, but there are other ideas coming up as well. And on the other hand, as we heard beforehand, the kings are not necessarily friendly with Chachamim. They are sometimes very much not friendly, and they kill them, some of them. And with that background, we could say the following. And I return now to the text itself. Be careful with your words, and that is because you have to be afraid of the king, of the authorities, and I think that connects with the last words of the Mishnah that Rabbi Michael taught. Be careful with your words when you criticize the king or the authorities, because you have reasons to criticize them, because they aren't very friendly with the Chachamim, but you should be careful, because if you're not careful, they might give you a punishment, and you will have to escape to another country. And there you will find evil waters. Now, what is evil waters? Now we will have to explain the allegory. That is ideas that are heretical, and impossible to harmonize with Judaism. Your students will come after you, because that's what students usually do if they're very much connected with their teacher. In that new environment, the students will follow the students that will follow. They will drink. What will they drink? That is, they will be influenced by these ideas, and they will leave the true path, and that is Chilul Hashem, and that is a way that profanes the name of Hashem. Now, perhaps, my friend, Yehuda ben Tabai, who was the teacher of these two Chachamim, according to a passage in the Talmud Yerushalmi, he escaped to Egypt, and we don't hear about him afterwards. He escaped because what's told there, he didn't want to be sort of the Nasi, the president, but anyhow, he went there. Now, in Egypt in these days, is a very developed high philosophy, Greek philosophy. We have Philon there, who tries to harmonize Judaism with Greek philosophy. And perhaps they meant this is a case where we have an idea that is like the evil waters, and they will destroy the thoughts of Judaism, and you can't harmonize between these two. And according to this instruction to the Chachamim to be careful with his words, that actually relates what he says when he criticized the authorities and so on. And the result will be that he will have to escape, or he will be sent away, and it will come to a place where there are ideas that are not easy to cope with Judaism, and the pupils will sort of perhaps go away from Judaism, as happened. For example, we met Antigonus in the second or third Mishnah, whose two pupils went astray from Judaism. That is one way of explaining it. I think it fits the text. It fits the instruction in the beginning to be careful, and it also fits the allegory. But in the commentaries, in the later commentaries, I mean what happened afterwards, what we call Rishonim, the Rambam, and also afterwards, there we usually find another commentary, and I think the reason is quite clear, because the historic background isn't there any longer. So what does this text tell me or tell the rabbi who reads this Mishnah? And then we find a bit different way of understanding it. And when they say in the beginning of the Mishnah that he should be take care and be careful with his words when he teaches, here usually the different rabbis and commentators say that when the rabbi teaches, he should not teach his most radical ideas. He should be careful what he teaches to whom, because it might be misunderstood. But then, of course, we have to sort of deal with the allegory, and that will be a bit different. And galut, exile, doesn't necessarily mean to geographically go to a certain place, but it means to come to a wrong place. If you, the rabbi, teach things that are too deep, too radical, and the students don't really understand what you mean altogether fully, and they will think that our rabbi has said something new, and perhaps they will feel that it belongs to the other sects, to the other ideas, and then we will come again to a profanation of the name, great name of Hashem. And there we have, of course, another teaching, that is that the rabbi should be careful with what he teaches. And we have such ideas in the Mishnah, such as in Masechet Chagiga, there they talk about more mystical ideas, and they say you shouldn't teach that to big audience, only one-to-one and not to everyone, and so on. And you have to think about what you say, because you might be misunderstood, and then the whole of the Torah and the Judaism might be misunderstood, and people will actually leave. Now, I would like to ask you, my dear friends, if you're still here, I think I will stop sharing the text we've seen already.
Everybody's here.
Okay, you see me as well?
Yes.
Okay, I haven't changed, hopefully. Anyhow, I like to sort of put a problem. When I speak to you, for example, you are here, and I'm very happy that you are here, and I try to teach. Should I choose what I tell you? Or can I say, well, I have an idea just now, in these days, in these weeks, and to me, it's a radical idea because it's new. I found something new, and it should be fitting to teach you that, because that's what I'm thinking about. That's what's interesting for me just at the moment. But on the other hand, you might misunderstand me. Not because I think you're not able to understand. You're able, just as I'm able, and not less. But since perhaps you don't have the whole picture, you don't have the whole background just now, and I might be misunderstood. And what's worse is that the Torah might be misunderstood, and that will lead to kind of Chilul Hashem, and therefore I shouldn't talk to you about my last idea or something like that, but I should plan what I say to a certain audience. And that would actually come out of this Mishnah, and the Mishnah turns to me and says, Chachamim, I'm not a Chacham, I'm a teacher. Hizaru b'divrechem, you should be careful about what you say. That's on the one hand. But on the other hand, as I already said, you are thinking people with an intellectual curiosity. And then I should try to give you an idea that I feel this is the right thing to speak about now. This is perhaps a new understanding, deeper understanding might be, and I should try to give you something that is intellectually or food for you, something that you can have and take to yourself and then develop something, and that is a problem for the teacher sometimes. I don't know if you have something to say about it. But I think that the solution might be, it depends if I am or the teacher is authentical. That is, if I really feel that this is a true idea that is connected with the Talmud, with Judaism, with our thinkers and our philosophers and so on, I think then I should teach it, even if it might be an idea which is quite radical, because I feel it's true and it is within the framework of what I call or what we call or what you call Judaism. I will soon touch that problem. Who says what is, and I'll come to it in a moment. But I think if I feel that it's something true and real, one should teach that. What should not be done, perhaps, is that sometimes it might be that the rabbi or the teacher gives an idea for another reason. There was once a musical many years ago, and there was a song saying, anything you can do, I can do better. I forgot. Ani get your gun, I think it was. Anything you can do, I can do better. And that is that the rabbi sees ideas coming up, the latest idea coming up in the I don't know where, in an article or someone who spoke about it. So then I say, anything you can do, I can do better. I can say the same idea, I can find it in the Torah or something. That I would say, here I should say, no, wait a moment. Here I have another reason. I want to show you that whatever you find interesting and in our days, I can also show it to you in the Torah and so on. And here I would say, no, wait a moment. Think of what you are teaching. Be sure that it's an idea that is truly within the Torah, and try to teach it in a pedagogical manner, that it should be clear and understood and so on. And then I think that is what I should do when I teach this nice and wonderful group, in order to try to give you something, if that is possible. Now, the last thing I would like to deal with is, someone might say, in these days of postmodernism, perhaps we are in a post, I don't know where we are, but and I don't like postmodernism, but that's a matter of everyone has his ideas. Anyhow, one might say, who decides what is within the framework? Who decides what can be something that will lead to Chilul Hashem? and so on. And I think, and you can say everything is right, which postmodernism to a certain extent say everything is true, everything is not true, you can say whatever you want. I don't think that is true. I think, as the Rambam says in a letter that he writes, that there sort of is a central path within Judaism. If you see what's said in the Talmud, in the Midrashim and so on, you can feel a central path. If you are within that central path, that is sort of the Torah. And there might be things that are outside. There are things that are outside. There are things that do not fit with our Torah. It might be things that are unethical, that are things that in other ways don't fit. There are things that don't fit. They are not a part of our heritage. There are things that we can take to us and being a part of the Torah, but the teacher, the rabbi, has to think what ideas he feels do belong to the Torah and could be taught, even if they are radical. But sometimes something is outside the border, outside the limit, and there are things that and for sure there should be things that can't cope with the Torah. Because I don't think the post-modernism is true. There are things that are, to our way of seeing it, that are wrong, and they are not the right and the true thing. So that's more or less what I wanted to try to teach you with this Mishnah. That is, we saw actually two ways of explaining it. One explanation was within a historical framework, and to be careful with the authorities, because otherwise you might come to a place where there are ideas that are different to cope with together with his pupils and so on. And the second explanation was your words themselves. What you say, what you choose to say, in order not to mislead or bring about a misunderstanding, which could be something that is very much harmful to the Torah, to Judaism as such. Okay, that is more or less what I wanted to say. And if someone has any question or anything to say, I will try to answer.
There's a question from Yetta.
Yeah, not a question, but some comments.
Please.
It's lovely to hear also this from you, Meir. I need some food for how you think and how Michael think through many years to have this Torah knowledge. And it's really good food for me because all of us think ourselves and we do our own thinking, but we do the knowledge. We do know the knowledge, I think, from because of the post-modern time. We don't get any knowledge from the historical Jewish time. Nearly, short only.
Okay.
Thank you so much for lovely work.
Thank you. So we should try to cook it in the right way, the food that you need, and not to burn it or something, and that it would be something that you could eat yes. Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, my friends. Pirkei Avot hasn't ended yet. I think it continues next week. And some of our colleagues will continue, and we will come back again. Thank you very much for coming tonight.
Thank you all for joining. Thank you, Rabbi Meir.
You're welcome. Yes. Okay, Annie, bye-bye. Bye-bye to all of you. Shalom.
ביי ביי, תודה רבה.
בבקשה.
ביי ביי.
לילה טוב.
תודה רבה. לילה טוב.
לילה טוב.